When your approach is more towards, okay, it's a problem and we are going on an adventure, we are trying to figure out what it is, that shift helps because everybody starts getting more open to it.
This week's food job is Product Development and Commercialization Manager. Today's guest for this role is Pratistha Banerjee from Darigold, an American dairy company serving wholesale, retail, and food service markets. In this episode, we'll talk about how multiple small issues can derail a product at scale.
You are seeing it real time over, let's say, 50 iterations. You start kind of thinking through and questioning yourself on like, what is further going on? Like, there is more to the dynamics.
Why not every idea makes it past the starting line.
Being cognizant of what is it that we cannot do. And this might not be an industry standard. It could be because of some promise that we deliver on as a product company.
And what to do when theory and practice do not align.
So you always have these kind of back and forths where it might not be actually one problem. It might be different things that are adding up and then making it a problem. So my food job started way back in 2013 or 2014 with what was a brief internship became something that I started liking, and my internship converted into a full-time with the organization that I was in because they had a role in their product development team. Growing up with a background in Willy Wonka, seeing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, I was always very fascinated with food. And there was these instances when my parents weren't home. My mom was also a professor, so she wouldn't be home. I would come back home. I would try to stir up these random stuffs in the kitchen, which I admit were not always the best to taste, but hey, I still tried them anyways. So I think I always had that interest in me. Moving forward a couple of years, right now my role with Darigold is more so focused on development and commercialization for new products, optimization of current products, cost savings. Those are some of the things that we work on across the plants that Darigold has today. And this is more of a dairy focused role, which also gives me the opportunity to learn and value add my knowledge with the dairy industry.
Wow. Well, that sounds like an interesting job that's full of all these different things that keeping your mind going in lots of different areas. So let's dive a little bit deeper into what that means for the day to day, because you gave us a nice like a picture overall, but let's think last week or the week before, like what would be some of the key things that you do in your role?
Absolutely. So we recently came out with the Darigold protein shakes. And FYI, that is also available in Amazon if anybody is interested to try it out. That was something that I spearheaded from my team on the development side and the commercialization side of things, where we worked on the ideation, the innovation, basically all the stage gate processes, and we were able to launch that product come this year, March. In terms of product highlights, that's the latest that I have worked on. Other work and tasks that I have to look into is handling customer complaints, working on reformulations. For instance, the last couple of weeks, we have been looking at some challenges from a product performance that our customer had. So we have had to work with the plants, understand why that has been coming in, and what are the ways to optimize if there are challenges in the processing or the development side of things, even from a formula per se, because this is an existing product that has been running for quite some time. So, it goes all the way from working with the suppliers that provide us all these raw materials, working with the plants, understanding what their current process is, where all there can be faults, how our formula is performing, and what are all the ingredients or what are all the factors that could be affecting all of it. So we have also been trying to work with people outside of our industry in academia who could also give us some more insight into what are those interactions that might be causing something like this. And that's pretty much what has taken up most of my time, I would say, for the last 2 weeks or so.
I Could see why that would take up a lot of time. I think especially with, I could imagine working with established products, it's its own unique set of challenges because I guess it's fun with a new one. You get to try all these different things, but then when you're trying a product that's established, you have to keep to what the consumers already want because, it's hard to, I could imagine that like people, if I got a product that I loved and then all of a sudden it changes in a way that's what different than I would expect, but I don't get the complaint, like it sounds like a tough time, to be honest with you. I know with dairy, there's a little bit of a difficulty because you have such a like a short product span with like traditional milks and that, and then if you want to have an extension life, I'm thinking about something like the protein milk, like that's so in right now. That's so in with that type of product, but you have to think about the shelf life. You know, I'm thinking people taking it to the gym, and when you were designing the product, like how does that process even work? So where I'm going with this is just to open the veil about like what are the steps. So we say we want a protein drink. Like how do you even begin to say? Because you there's so many different options. So walk me through a little bit of some of the steps that you went through to get to that product.
I think I would like to start with how grateful I am that we have very defined processes that exist in the food industry today. And especially even with Darigold, we have been really good with the way we maintain some sets and processes of things. How that helps is pretty much everybody in the team knows which part of that process they are responsible for. And how that makes it easier is there is accountability to it.
Okay.
So, why I bring that in is even when we were developing this product, the essential part is sure, we are looking at the formulation side of it or we are looking at the prototyping side of it. However, before that, like you said, identifying who are all the key players today or who are we competing against, which would basically inform the impact we should have to stand out or have a unique differentiation in one way or the other. So I would say that helped because we work with the branding team, the marketing team, and they had their own sets of information that, of course, they bring in, as with any concept studies, right? Which would pretty much inform us in the stage gate process if that product will even make it to the next stage based on the gate it is in. So once that happened, we pretty much knew what were our guardrails or what is it that we are trying to develop, being cognizant of what is it that we cannot do. And this cannot, might not be an industry standard. It could be because of some promise that we deliver on as a product company. Maybe Darigold has some standards they adhere to. It could be some regulational challenges that we could get into. It could be some operational efficiencies as well, some costing or some revenue initiatives that you also kind of have to think through when you make those decisions, right? So once we are there, it's pretty much a very much back and forth of working, developing the product, working with suppliers, doing testing with consumers to get a sensory attribute or to understand how your current product would perform versus your competitors, which is not up until you have a formula that everybody aligns with, right? So essentially what would
Yeah.
happen is you would go with back and forth, you would work with consumers, you would have some testing done. You also would want to look at the technical aspect of it. For instance, where all could you have some descriptional challenges? Maybe there are notes in it, right, that are not helping us. Maybe they are setting us up for failure. So what you do is you do those kind of tests, then you pretty much compare them and see how your current product is performing versus your competitors. And then, based on the descriptional tests that you're doing, you also understand which attributes could potentially be helping or hampering your product performance compared to your competitors. So, this process, I would say, takes the longest time because A, your intention is to develop a product that is really good within the constraints of cost, operations, what your product company promises to deliver on, and also trying to be better than where your competitors are. So, all of these with timing makes it challenging, right? And then
Right.
once you have that, it's pretty much working with sales, getting a forecast, having those in, and then planning on looking ahead and launching your product based on that timeline.
Okay. See, that puts it more into perspective because unless you're going out and creating like a brand new, never before seen, for a lot of the products we see in the market, there is some kind of foundation that you're building upon, whether milk, you're not creating a brand new milk out of thin air, but it's a type of milk. Okay, we've made regular milk that you get at the supermarket, like a 2% milk. And then it's like, okay, that's an already established product. And then you're almost like changing it, you're making changes to it. So, what I mean by that is it's not. You're innovating, but you're not necessarily like making a new chemical element or something like that. Like you do have foundations to fall back on. It sounds like.
Yes, you're right. I would say if we were more of an ingredient centric organization generally, maybe that would also have been one of the key components where we
Mm.
would have to look at improvising on the chemical ingredient side of things, which could mean something like changing the particle size, increasing the molecular size of sugar, let's say, or sodium so that the retention is less, things like that. With this organization and this role, I believe that that has not come up yet.
And it really sounds like there's, as much as you might not like them sometimes, there are constraints at each step of the way that do somewhat narrow down the potential. Like it's, with cost, it might be really great to use that really interesting ingredient, but if it costs 10,000 a kilo, then it's just a constraint that you're just not going to do.
That you got it right, Veronica. That can be a challenge, and I think the flip side of it is the good part is you know what your limitations and restrictions are. So you kind of start accounting for them early on, where you are being more preventive rather than being more reactive to that scenario.
Hmm. So, speaking about this process, though, what parts of it do you enjoy the most? Because it sounds like they use different mindsets depending on where you are. Because at the beginning, it sounds like you'd be more in the lab, but later on, it'd be more optimization and working on the plant floor. Do you have any parts of the um, process that are your favorite?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I like to think I'm a people's person.
Okay.
So, because this is a more people facing role, meaning you are working with plants, you're also working with suppliers, then you're also trying to work with customers to understand what their feedback is. I like having perspectives from different people across different teams, and that value adds into my knowledge also, which helps me get a good holistic view on where it is that I'm today. And whenever I'm looking at a different product or even existing products, having all these perspectives help. For instance, even with the plants that we work with today, we have teams there, we have individuals there who are absolutely excellent at what they do. It could be somebody who has worked on the line for years, and that person has so much expertise on that product that they run. You ask them one question, and you would be amazed at the plethora of knowledge that they have. They will exactly know which are the points there could be challenges, what are the historical biases or trends that they have seen while running this product. Same with suppliers, when you are working with them for development of a product, it's intriguing and fascinating as to how much knowledge they bring into your database. It's more along this is what this ingredient can do, this is what it cannot do. Sure, this has a higher cost, but maybe we can try working around it, probably lowering its dosage and using something in tandem with it so that you can get a good delivery. Things like that. And beyond that, I would say the connections, because ultimately everybody wants to be heard at the end of the day. And I feel like that human connection is really helpful for me because it makes me feel like everybody out there is trying to make an impact in their own way.
That is surprising of an answer that I expected. I don't know. I guess I was expecting to hear, going into the lab, trying all these different things, but hearing that it's human centric, I love that. I love the idea of gaining knowledge from all the different people in the plant, and it's not just the product development team that, ultimately comes together to make it, but there's all these different opinions along the way. And I guess what I'm wondering as well is as you're talking to each person, like how do you approach doing that? Because a lot of people get really busy in their own roles, on the line. There's so much going on. Is it conversations that are just you do go out on the line and you just ask a question here and there? Do they come up over the lunch meeting? Do you make meetings? I know that's a very specific question, but I'm just imagining, like, you talked about so many different people.
It depends on the project you're working on.
Okay.
So, knowledge or communications like these, I would not believe can happen all while you're on a single project. However, depending on if you are working on, let's say, 5 projects, one of them means you're trying to improve the performance of a current product. So, what that entails is you're working in those plants where that product is being made. You're looking at those lines where that product is being made. You're connecting with those people who have been making those products in and out. Parallelly, if you're working on a project which means completely a new product and no one has ever worked on it in your organization, that means you're working with suppliers who are helping you develop that product. Suppliers who are exceptionally well versed in their fields and they are providing you their best offerings, which gets you a chance while you are developing it to also seek their insight.
Okay. That puts it into perspective, and it also sounds like you do a lot of traveling then, or does that mean that you do a lot of traveling with this role?
Yes, I do have to, and I like it. There are days when I feel like I'm on the fly all the time. But I think I like that part of being able to travel around, connect with different people from, different parts of the plant or the industry. And I hope I can connect with more people as I go along my field.
Wow. And when it comes to building up this knowledge, how, like, do you just have like a notepad? Okay, because innovation can come from a lot of things, and I know that's something that prior to this conversation we talked a lot about it, and it sounds what you're doing is, you're innovating products, and just because you're trying to improve a formulation, that is a form of innovation, or you're creating a new innovation. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that. So, in your words, like, what would you define innovation as in the context of, I guess we'll say dairy, just because that is something that you do currently, but like, let's talk about innovation and like how you actually involve that in your process.
I would say now in the world we live in, especially with AI and all the new technologies that are coming up, innovation is starting to expand in the way it is used. For instance, it is innovation when Willy Wonka made bird eggs.
Yes, for sure.
It is innovation when I look at trends that I've worked on with my previous company in Dubai, where We had existing line and new lines for our products, and we were trying to come up with new ways to expand on the shelf life of bakery ingredients or of muffins or breads. That was also innovation because that meant understanding the functionality of ingredients. How is it that we can work around the processing side of things and pretty much blending all of that to get towards a solution that might not get you to the most of shelf life, but somewhere in middle. Here, similarly, I believe innovation is, for me, at least in the dairy industry, has been knowing what are all the trends that we have been playing with. For instance, protein, clean label. Recently, an organization, I believe, launched creatine, like how creatine has become a big thing for muscle recovery. So I would say that is also innovation because you are catching up with those trends and then you're trying to deliver something which would have the most impact. So that also means understanding what the bioabsorption is of an ingredient, understanding how much delivery a product can manage to have, getting consumers' insight on why they choose a specific product. So I would say all of that has been innovation for me here. And not to mention, because dairy is very strictly regulated, you have the PMO, you have FDA, you have USDA. So with every regulation that you have in the dairy industry, it was a learning for me as well when I learned that even interstates have their own requirements for dairy.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I would say, for instance, California has their own regulation for what a milk should have in terms of solids or fat if you are making a certain claim.
Mm-hmm.
Or Montana has its own regulation for shelf life. So all these tiny nuances, I think, feed into your data.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. I like it's interesting when you mention about it seems like it's taking what's going on in the world around you, at least in the context of the food industry, but it's taking all that's going on and around you and finding out how to apply it and transform it. So it's really just taking ideas from the world and transforming products that might exist or that are new. So that's pretty cool. It's definitely it sounds like it's you need the foundation for sure because like if you don't know how to make milk, quote unquote, if you don't know how to make milk, then you can't innovate on it. So you do need that foundation, but you also need to have your eyes open to the world in order to innovate. It's not you can't innovate in a box.
Yeah, you're bang on it. And I think that's another part that I love about innovation or development or commercialization is it really pushes you to think out of the box.
Yeah.
And if you are a creative thinker that I like to think I am, it helps you design things, it helps you innovate, it helps you be creative with your approaches. And the result is baffling because another realization that I had early on was even if chemistry is telling me a Maillard reaction is supposed to be happening the moment it is going into the oven, let's say, for a product. A couple of iterations in, I realize it is not happening that way. So then there are multiple interactions that are going in, which might be affecting the internal dynamics of that product. So I think another realization that it led to was I had the backing up of knowing what could be happening. But when you are seeing it real time over, let's say, 50 iterations, you start kind of thinking through and questioning yourself on like, what is further going on? Like, there is more to the dynamics. It might be the starch, it might be the eggs, it might be the excess sugar, which is causing the cake to, let's say, sink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It just makes me think about my own research where you say, I'm going to do this formulation, I'm going to cool it this way. And then you get something that was not what you planned on, and there's one curiosity, like there's a little bit of an upset because it's like, oh, that didn't work. I thought it would work perfectly. But then there's the other side that's that curiosity. It's like, but why is it not working? Like, what about my understanding is giving me that gap between what the real world is showing and what's theoretical on paper?
You are so right. And we have to talk about that some other day too. I would like to know more about your
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. I have a lot of stories of things not working. But no, it's theoretical always doesn't work in person, and it's it can be challenging. I can imagine there is a lot of iterations that you have to do, and it's different pieces of equipment. It's the different type of day. It's humid this day. It's dry this day, and just things that don't even process in your mind was a factor can come up without even realizing it. And thinking about innovation as well, like we talk about what it is, but you mentioned like curiosity and you trying these different things. And I'm just wondering, have you always been a curious person, or was that a skill that you kind of worked at or figured out how to use your curiosity as a method to get to where you want? So I'll take that back and just ask, have you always been a curious person, or was that something that you developed over time?
I think growing up, I was always this kind of a person. So as I look back with my faintest memories that I can think, and as my mother usually quotes, I have always been a kid who would ask a lot of questions. And sure, at some point she used to get annoyed about it because I would just keep asking questions all the time. Why is this happening? What is the reason? Why is this happening? And I remember her telling me my grandfather was making notes of it, I think, somewhere in his mind. And he suggested my mom that, please don't stop her, like answer her to the
Yeah.
best of what you know. And if you don't, just try to like learn, tell her, or guide her to someone who can tell her. Because I think the other part that comes out of it is if I don't find an answer, I keep reading up or I keep trying to understand why or what is causing it. So I would think I have always been a very curious person. And that would, again, that is limited to like things that I think I like. For instance, I like talking about women empowerment or women for women, things like that, or food shortages that we have been seeing around the world. Like those are things that I think rile me up. So there are some things like that which I think I'm more curious about, or I try to understand why it might be happening. And I think growing up, that the way I thought through things, or how your environment shapes you,
Yes, absolutely.
I think going through different cultures, working across countries, uh, moving so much, it brought in that perspective that we are really small in the grand scheme of things.
Um, I love that. I like that it sounds like you've always had this like curious mindset, but then you've had these different experiences that have shaped and changed your curiosity just to have different perspectives because you might, if you didn't have this experience, you might not see things in a different way to be curious. Like you might, well, that's how things always are, but then you get so used to how something is that you don't realize that that's not the status quo everywhere else.
No. Yeah. Yes. You have it right, Veronica. And I think the other thing that I have really liked always is problem solving. Like I think I'm more of a builder, like innovator or a problem solver. So that also helps because when you are usually a curious person, or when you are usually asking the what's and the whys, you start understanding what could be the causes, or you start brainstorming to figure out how to problem solve in an efficient way. Because once you know what the challenge is, pretty much that's the next step. Now you're trying to figure out how you can solve.
And when you say brainstorming, I guess that's another interesting idea because as much as we'd like to say, oh, I have a problem, let's brainstorm. And then after 10 minutes of writing something down, ooh, look, I have the solution to the problem. Do you, when you are approaching problem solving, do you sit down with a piece of paper and just write it out? Like, how do you start to innovate and just what's your process? I guess that's where I'm asking.
I think the way that I have been doing it has actually changed with time. For instance, when I was in my first role, the problems that I was given to solve were not as significant. It were it was significant for me at that time because I was very new into the role.
Right.
So at that point, I do not remember any moment when people were also not very on it. So if I had a problem, I would go to people, I would ask them questions, whether it was on the line, whether it was with my managers, it was my team, and I would try to understand, get more clarity on what if that is the same problem that everybody across that team is having. For instance, it could be that product development thinks we are developing a product the right way. Production is saying, well, it's not coming out right on the line. So if it's not coming out right on the line, that means it's not a good product. So you always have these kind of back and forths where it might not be actually one problem. It might be different things that are adding up and then making it a problem. And with time, when I think through it, I what I've observed is when you brainstorm with different people across different teams who of course have purview into the problem, they have their own data sets or their own points, which even though they might be as nuanced, they are in some way or the other adding into that problem happening. If I get perspective from somebody who is not related to the problem but has a knowledge of how things are working, they bring in new perspectives. So they might feed into my data on how they would have approached it. So, what I typically try to do is I try to understand what the problem is, get data from different people who might be in some way involved in it, even if it's not a direct contact. It might be the sourcing team or the procurement team who sources a particular ingredient and they are having sourcing challenges. Or it could be the development team. They have always done it this way, and then suddenly this ingredient is not performing as they predicted it would perform in other products.
Hmm.
It could be the person on the line who has been running the product, and then suddenly, couple of days ago, they started seeing there is deshaping, or there is something that's not processing the way, or its density is higher than what they have historically seen while they run the product. So I would say something like that is where you are getting data from everyone. And then I think once that is done, I like to sit with it and understand if I am getting a good gauge of what the problem is. And then pretty much I sit with the problem. I try to understand if I have a good gauge of what the problem is. Right. So once that's done, I think I like to go to my seniors, peers, or people who are either not related to the problem or have worked with, let's say, an ingredient or a process in other products. And then once that happens, I think I like to brainstorm with the team and understand if we all are A, having the problem, A, we are all aligned on if that could be a problem, or what are the causes that are leading to a problem. And then pretty much having a couple of sessions where we are working towards what the next steps can be.
It really sounds like you're on a little bit of an adventure and you're investigating and you're trying to, what's the problem? You're coming back to that human centric, talking to other people, grabbing the information, trying to get it from different sources. It kind of sounds just like a big puzzle that you're trying to solve as a mystery.
That helps. I literally call it mystery. So usually when we have something like that, if you would look at my meetings, you would laugh because I call them mystery because it makes you think of the problem in an innovative way where you are not thinking of it as a problem. Well, it is a problem, but when your approach is more towards, okay, it's a problem and we are going on an adventure, we are trying to figure out what it is, and not like, oh, it's a problem, it keeps happening, things like that. And that shift helps because everybody starts getting more open to it.
It's that mind shift. It's that mind shift where it's putting a spin on something. It makes it fun. I mean, obviously you're staying in this job because you enjoy it, but I could, and not everything's going to be roses every single day, but it is like that's why scientists come and do things because they love the mystery. They like trying to like better understand the world. But I think that I got to steal that for myself as we're talking. I'm like, why don't I call my own like issues that I'm having little mysteries? Like I love mystery novels. That's like my thing.
We have to talk about that as well then some other time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think scientists are naturally curious about things, but it can get so caught in the day to day of just trying to solve that very specific thing. And if you don't get some perspective on things, it plays a role. So yeah, I love that. I think that's a fun way of going about it and just gaining knowledge. It's fun. One thing that I realize as we haven't even spoken about during this conversation, and you touched upon it a little bit, is just your journey into the food industry. You know, there's a lot of different ways you can be a curious kid and then study lots of different types of science. So I guess I just want to know about what drew you into the food industry and walk us through a little bit about some of the key steps that you took just to get to where you are today.
I think it would begin with my undergrad in biotechnology. So I did my engineering in biotechnology from Vellore Institute of Technology, which is one of the really good institutes back in India. While I was pursuing that course, we had a food biotechnology course that was a core subject that we had to do. And that was pretty much also the first course where we were hands on working on a mini project as a part of the curriculum. So I remember it was me and two of my other friends, and we were working on this new type of dessert, trying to make the dessert, have some plating done. And again, it was, I wouldn't say it was anything big, but the fact that it was the first time that we did something like that was also fascinating for me. And we actually got awarded. We were given like a innovator mini award
That's
for
fun.
that course. So I think that fed into my understanding of like, okay, this is something I like. And fast forward a couple of years, as a part of the curriculum, we had to do a thesis. So when I did my thesis, which was on sugar alcohols, and I worked with sponge cakes to look at replacement of sugar with sugar alcohols and seeing what the best option could be. During that process, I think I got more in tune with the liking. When I did that curriculum, I kind of knew that I liked it. When I did the thesis, I think it reinforced that yes, this is where I want to go. And that helps because traditionally biotechnology is also a very open field. Like, and you can go into immunology, you can go into cellular biology, you can go into animal biotechnology. So I think having a background in food technology helped because I eventually started working with breads and cakes. So I would look at fermentation, we would be doing proofing. So I could also see my knowledge getting involved and I could use it. So I think all of that kind of led towards a career in food. Of course, like I was mentioning, I was always a big fan of Willy Wonka. I really loved Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I remember having this conversation a couple of days back with a friend of mine and saying the same thing, that when I would see the floating river of chocolate, it was very fascinating to me as a kid back then. I just did not know that you could make a career out of it.
That's not widely published as like a kid's job. Like you think about the farmer who makes the food and then the grocery store person, but like everything, or the baker or the cheese maker, but the food scientist. Yeah. It's funny when you look back on the things that you were into as a child that it sometimes provides some clues as to, oh, I kind of have always liked that. Just maybe shape it in a different way.
Yes, and Veronica, I think I would also be grateful to my first two managers in my first job. Exceptional mentors. They were also along the lines of, Pratisha, why don't you, go ahead and see if you wanted to study a little bit further, or, you wanted to explore something new in food, because we think you can make a career in it because you seem to be that kind of person. And a little bit of who I am today is also because of them. So I think I will always be grateful for that.
It's the right people in your life being encouragement. Sometimes that's the most important thing as well. Like you see those clues when you're a kid, but if it wasn't for that one person that really believed in you and saw something that you might not at the right time and say you should check that out, it's so important to talk with other people. Like again, it comes back to that human centric thing that you're mentioning earlier, we don't live our lives in boxes. We are with a lot of different people, but having a great mentor can just, or even just, I don't even want to say mentor, just having the right person in your life can really just change the whole trajectory.
That's correct.
Actually, I think that's a great little transition to talk about mentorship. Comes up a lot in the podcast and networking and building careers, and I know that's something that you mentioned earlier that you feel strongly about. So, I guess talking about talking about networking, like, have you found that it's changed throughout your career? Do you see it differently? Everyone always says network, 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 but you know that means a lot of different things. So I guess, yeah, let's talk a little bit about networking and if your approach has changed over the years.
I would think so. I think also because as you get older, I feel like my personality has shifted over time. Like I'm definitely not the kind of person I was 10 years back. So I think as I have gone through different countries, met more people, traveled to different places, I think I have been trying to understand how is it that people operate, or different cultures, different ways of working or thinking through things. And if nothing, it has opened up my perspective, and I hope I will learn and gain more as I get older. So I would say that has changed the way that I have seen networking. To iterate, I don't think I'm a very extroverted person. So there are times when I'm in my own zone. And with the times that we are in, I believe networking is coming to a point where it is starting to open up to different types of people with different personalities. My misconception early on used to be that you have to be really outgoing, you have to be really out there to be networking all the time. However, I think lately I have started questioning how much of that is real.
Hmm. Yeah, networking is such a challenge. I mean, and what I mean by that is I'm an introverted person. Despite being on a podcast, I actually find that people think that introverts are people who just like read in a book and that, but I actually find it a lot of introverts are actually like YouTubers and all that because you're in front of a computer and it's a one-on-one thing. So like to me, this is great. Like I tell people, like
Yeah.
you can be an outgoing introvert it make you just get your energy from being more personal type things. And like I still get very nervous when I network. I still get nervous before I even start doing this podcast. And it's it's such a weird word because you want to become treat the person as an individual. And I understand that there's this need in the industry, about who you know and all that. But sometimes it's just like, I just want to know people for who they are. And, the networking part just makes it sound a little bit not fun. Like, it's like, I'd rather say I'm not networking with someone. I'm having a great conversation over coffee. Like, it's a weird word.
I like the way you put it, and I think that's something I could add to my perspective. It's you meet someone for coffee because you want to spend time with them
Yeah,
and
exactly.
understand how food works in their world.
Yeah, it's not this transactional word like, okay, I guess you're networking because I mean, I have friends. Does that mean I'm networking with my close friends every No.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't use that word. So it's like I almost feel like it's a word to get you out of your comfort zone. Like for me, I'm like I should network because if I don't, I can get very caught in my own ways and not going out and talk to other people. So I guess I'm like I should network, but I'm like I don't like that word. It's I think as well like myself I do think that my views have changed on it. Like I still remember as an undergrad I'm like I must go talk to every person that I can at this event, and it was very scary. And now I realize like you don't have to do that. And you're not gonna you don't have to like every person. Like my view has changed that it's more fulfilling to go just get to know try to think of it as getting to know a person and just like genuinely connecting with someone and just liking talking and doing those types of things rather than it has to be I'm going to get as many business cards, because the industry's small but it's also big enough that you don't have to know every single person. And you're young, you don't need, I mean, in the context of things, like you have your whole life to network, quote unquote. You're going to come across people over without trying. So as long as you just show up and just trying to connect, I think that's how I go into networking. It's just not getting a business card anymore. It's just like I just want to talk to cool people, like honestly, and get to know them.
I like that. That's a good perspective. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's so intimidating. But I know we could talk about networking all day, and again, I always LinkedIn's always a great place, or start a podcast, haha. It gives a good excuse to do it. But I we are getting to the end of our conversation, and I just wanted to talk a little bit more about advice because I do like to ask all my guests a piece of advice. So, for you, for students that are hoping to enter into the food industry as, let's say, a product developer, what do you think is one thing that they should start doing right now while they're still in school?
I would say connecting with individuals who are in their field is a must. Connecting with more people would not only help them understand where they are in their careers, it would also give them an insight into what is it that they exactly want to pursue. Do they want to go into dairy? Do they want to go into enzymes? Do they want to go into ingredient specific companies? So, those are questions that would get answered for them. And once they are connecting with individuals, they will get a gauge of how it would be to be in that kind of role and if they would like it. Because a must have for me with any role is liking it. If I am not enjoying what I am doing, then it will soon start to feel like it's forced, at which point one starts not liking it.
And just going into that a little bit more, because to me, a product developer in each of these industries is the same. You're a product developer, but you mentioned about like which industry do you want to go into? Like, what kind of question could you ask to help figure out which one is more for you?
Understanding what is it that they do more of, like let's say they work more with dairy. So a dairy industry would have milk, different processing types, different regulations. If they want to go into product development, what is it that these people have to work in day out? Versus if somebody is in a bakery ingredients company, those roles would have different types of ask in terms of development. For instance, even though you have the same holistic stage gate or the same way the process flows, the type of development shifts. Now you would be looking at a different type of component, different type of regulations, different type of product portfolios, which would change the way you have to operate. So understanding what those insinuations are and then kind of linking it to, is dairy something I would like to do? Is working with enzymes I would like to do? Do I like to see how those reactions happen? Do I like to be more on the back end side of things where I'm working with ingredients firsthand that other companies use for their products to develop? So those questions would help them understand. Or it could be something like what I have been doing. I have been going across different product types or types of industries. For instance, I was in bakery ingredients. Then I moved to an industry which had ingredients, bakeries, plus fillings. So acidified jams, low acidified fillings. Now I moved into an industry which has dairy. So that could be another approach where you are going through different industry types, work types, and you're value adding into your database of product development.
No, that's actually really good advice. I think, again, going to this mystery theme that we're talking about, like trying to do a little adventure about the different types of industries, because I think you bring up a good perspective that each of them are different, and you learn about it on paper, but hearing about what aspects of the product development they do a little bit more, it would be very valuable to know in your field that you want to go in. So I think that I am going to leave it there. So I think this will be a good conversation to share. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Veronica. This was amazing. And I'm so grateful that you invited me into your show.